It is an honour to rise to make my first formal contribution as a member of this House. And can I start by congratulating you on your election and taking your seat there. I'll also start by making a slight admission of honesty. I would admit that since arriving here, I've been nervous and anxious to make my maiden speech. You might even say I delayed making my maiden speech for fear that my new colleagues were superb orators who went on to make excellent speeches. Well, I'm happy to admit that that fear came to pass, that there have been some superb speeches in the last couple of days. And even today, and I'd like to pay tribute to my honourable friend from Spelthorne, my honourable friend from Mid-Bedfordshire, the honourable member for Edinburgh East and Musselburgh, Cardiff West, Poole, Glasgow South, Hazel Grove and Lincoln, and of course my neighbour, the honourable member for Ipswich. A great speech that did justice to that town, and I thank him for his kind words. He's no longer here, so I will stop the niceties there. I am in the fortunate position to have been sent to this place to represent a constituency and a people that have played a huge role in my life. My grandfather grew up in East London before moving to Essex to raise a family. It was in the 1980s, after retirement and with my grandmother Mary, that he made that all too familiar trip up the A12 to settle just 20 minutes outside of Ipswich. My earliest and happiest childhood memories were spent falling in love with a country and a countryside that I still call home today, a county and a people I am now humbled to represent in this place. Shock horror, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think central Suffolk and North Ipswich is blessed with some of the most beautiful countryside in England. But it is in fact the history of the area that makes it unique. The Anglo-Saxon king Raedwald was one of the richest and most powerful of his era. Consequently, Suffolk has become a treasure trove for archaeologists for nearly a century. My neighbour in Suffolk Coastal can indeed boast of Sutton Hoo, but on my far eastern border, just last year, a 1400-year-old pre-Christian temple was discovered, and experts can trace human activity in the area for almost 6,000 years. I'm also fortunate to count the beautiful market town of Framlingham in my patch, home to Framlingham Castle, a former seat of the famous Howard family, and St Michael's Church, which contains the tombs of Tudor royalty and nobility, something I love to take my two children to go and see. And of course I have Helmingham Hall in my constituency, which has unbelievably hosted both Queens Elizabeth I and Elizabeth II. It is unsurprising, given our ancient, lush and beautiful landscape, that we have a rich history of producing great artists who are inspired by those surroundings. Thomas Gainsborough, John Constable, Benjamin Britten, even Brian Eno and Ed Sheeran, to name a few, are all products of our wonderful county in some way or another. I'm afraid to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, this child of Suffolk was not blessed with the same artistic talent. The other great contribution, though, I've always felt that Suffolk makes to our country is that of food and drink. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I've been told by my wife that this is a domain that I certainly have more expertise and experience on. Central Suffolk is, and North Ipswich is home to Aspel cider, manufactured for almost 300 years from apple trees in the grounds of Aspel Hall. It is now one of the most recognisable brands in the global drinks market, exporting products to customers around the world. A great example of homegrown British global business success. As well as cider, we're also great exporters of sausages, spuds, chocolate and condiments. It's not uncommon to find Suffolk produce in shops across the country. And it is for that reason, in the past, and will now in this place support initiatives like that of my honourable friend, the member for Hinckley and Bosworth, to give consumers in this country the opportunity to buy produce from producers in this country. And while Suffolk farming and while the Suffolk farming and agricultural community is such an important part of our local community, I feel it's also emblematic of our local culture and identity, with its no-nonsense attitude to hard work, a love for family and community, complete and utter ambivalence to the weather, a deep affection for our natural environment. I'm sure all members have their bias, but I'm of the firm belief that the people of central Suffolk and North Ipswich are the finest our country has to offer. While I hope to be a voice primarily for the people of Suffolk and Ipswich, I also hope to use my time in this place to speak up for another cause. In a previous life, before entering this place, I worked under the Right Honourable Member for Chingford and Woodford Green at the Centre for Social Justice, and then as an advisor in the Department for Education. In that time, I realised that the Conservative Party and conservatism has a proud story to tell on the critical issue of helping those who need help, offering the most vulnerable in our society not just a handout, but a leg up, and standing up for what is just and fair in society. More than anything, it is about giving people the opportunity to meet their own potential. Now, I count the wards of Witton, White House and Castle Hill as part of my patch. Witton and White House are two of the most deprived wards in our country. Castle Hill is probably one of the most unequal. Ipswich, by any measure, like its football team, is a huge success story. But large parts of it, including many of those families living in White House, Witton and Castle Hill, have been left behind. The story is an all too familiar one. The failure to adapt in a post-industrial economy, generations of low-wage work, if not worklessness, the proliferation of crime and high levels of immigration that have caused a degree of social polarisation. For however long the people of central Suffolk and North Ipswich want me to represent them, I will fight in this place to empower those people who feel left behind, to those who want to get on in life, to those who want and can reach their potential. And at a time when faith and trust in politics is at an all-time low among those who feel locked out of our economy and our society, there is no pressing a cause than that of ensuring Britain works for everyone. Today we are debating the merits of allowing MPs to have a second job. Time and again on the doorstep, Madam Deputy Speaker, during this election, but also across the dining tables now for many years, I have heard from people, rich and poor, young and old, left and right, that they have lost faith in politicians to do the right thing. Believe it or not, Madam Deputy Speaker, the NHS, immigration, jobs, incomes, access to homes, all of them were hugely important to the voters at this general election. But the most important thing to the people across my constituency, from White House to Witton, Kesgrave to Claydon, Ringsall to Rendon, was, whether they voted for me or not, by the way, was restoring a sense of moral probity and public spiritedness to our political system. So as we embark on this debate and others in this place, let us keep that in mind. Of course, before I finish, I would like to pay tribute to my predecessor, Dr. Dan Poulter. He was, if anything, a dedicated servant to the people of Suffolk and Ipswich as both an MP and in his second job as a consultant doctor. He used his invaluable NHS experience as a junior minister in the Department for Health to sit on the draft bill committee reviewing the Mental Health Act for the first time in 40 years. And we felt the benefits of his healthcare expertise in Suffolk when he managed to save Hertsmere Hospital, previously of my constituency, now in the neighbouring Waveney Valley, and when he lobbied the government for a new accident and emergency wing for Ipswich General Hospital. As many people know, Dr. Dan arrived in this House as a member of my party and left as a member of another. But I don't feel any ill will, for it was another political hero of mine, Winston Churchill, who performed a similar journey over 120 years ago. And I don't mind saying it here, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I too hope one day to cross the floor, alas, before I give my whips a heart attack. not to swap political allegiances, but to be as a part of the Conservative Party elected back into government and taking our place back on the government benches. That came from a government whip, by the way. That was a government whip issue line. In the meantime, though, I'd like to thank my wife and my two little boys, Leo and Jasper, who I am sure are watching this on BBC Parliament right now. I would like to thank the doorkeepers and the clerks. I want to thank my mother. You've been a real trooper. She has been a real trooper to sit through nearly a 3.5-hour debate. She looks brighter now than she did when I put her on a polling station as a teller. But anyway, in the meantime, as I was saying, I look forward to working with members across this House in the pursuit of delivering for the people of this great nation.